and adulation he deserves.
It's like unconquered territory. So.
And adulation he deserves. It's like, unconquered territory. On August 9, 1986, Freddie Mercury stepped onto the stage for one last time. His doctor had warned him not to perform, his voice was failing. In the crowd, a fan's life would end during Who Wants to Live Forever. But what happened next shocked everyone. From John Deacon's violent outburst to Mercury's mysterious disappearance after the show, today we reveal what really happened during Queen's final concert. Freddie Mercury was born on September 5, 1946, in Zanzibar, a small island that was part of a British protectorate. His parents were Parsis and followed the Zoroastrian religion, one of the oldest religions in the world. Freddie's birth was special in many ways. He was born with 4 extra teeth, and later in life, he believed this gave him a unique vocal range that helped him sing in 4 octaves. He grew up surrounded by African, Arab, and Indian cultures, which influenced his style and music. When Freddie was 17, his life changed completely. The Zanzibar Revolution in 1964 became dangerous for families like his, and they had to escape. Thousands of people were killed, so his family fled to England. Before that, Freddie spent his early years in India. At just 8 years old, his parents sent him to a British-style boarding school called St. Peter's in Panchgani. This school near Mumbai became an important place for Freddie. It was there that he first started calling himself Freddie, and it's also where his love for music began. A teacher saw his talent and told his parents to pay extra for music lessons. This turned out to be a life-changing decision. At school, Freddie formed his first band, the Hectics, with 4 friends. They played rock and roll songs by famous artists like Cliff Richard and Little Richard. Freddie was only 12, but he already showed he had a natural gift for music. He also loved Bollywood singers like Lata Mangeshkar, whose soaring voice inspired his future performances. Even at that young age, Freddie began blending Western and Indian influences, something that later made Queen's music stand out. When Freddie's family moved to England, they settled in a small house in Feltham near London. Life wasn't easy at first, but Freddie was determined to follow his dreams. He joined Ealing Polytechnic in 1964 to study art and later went to Ealing Art College. At Ealing, Freddie became skilled in graphic design, and he would later use those skills to create Queen's famous logo. To support himself, Freddie worked odd jobs, including washing dishes at Heathrow Airport. While at Ealing, Freddie met Tim Staffel, who was in a band called Smile with guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor. Freddie became friends with them and often gave ideas about their performances. In 1970, when Tim left Smile, Freddie joined the band as their new singer. He suggested they call the band Queen because it sounded grand and powerful. Their first concert as Queen was in June 1970 at a charity event. The band still needed a bassist, and after trying out a few people, they found John Deacon in 1971. Around this time, Freddie also decided to change his last name to Mercury. He got the idea from a line in a song he wrote, "Mother Mercury, look what they've done to me." Queen wasn't an instant hit. Their first album came out in 1973 but didn't even make it on the charts in the UK and barely hit number 83 in the US. Their second album, Queen 2, released in 1974, didn't do much better. It only reached number 49 in the UK. The band was getting frustrated, but their third album, Sheer Heart Attack, finally changed everything. It had Killer Queen, a song that became their big break. It hit number 2 in the UK and made it to number 12 in the US. Freddie Mercury wrote Killer Queen one night while sitting at his piano. He came up with the words first, which was unusual for him since he usually started with the music. The song told the story of a classy, high-society prostitute. What made it stand out wasn't just the story but the sound. Brian May played an impressive guitar solo using a sixpence coin as a pick, and they added layers of sound with different production techniques. The song made Queen famous, but it also caused a bit of a fight in the band. Roger Taylor worried that its light, playful sound might make people think Queen wasn't a serious rock band. In fact, Killer Queen almost didn't make it on the album. It was recorded last, and there was a big debate about whether to include it. Then came Bohemian Rhapsody. This song, released in 1975 as part of A Night at the Opera, made Queen superstars. It wasn't easy to make, it took 3 weeks to record, had 180 different overdubs, and cost £40,000 to produce, making it the most expensive song ever at the time. The song was strange and different. It had 3 distinct parts: a slow, emotional beginning, an opera-like middle, and a loud rock finish. EMI executives didn't believe it would work. They thought it was way too long and the band was asked to cut the song down for radio, but they refused. Instead, their manager secretly gave the song to a popular DJ, Kenny Everett. He played it 14 times in one weekend, and fans loved it. The song topped the UK charts for 9 weeks straight. It became even more popular in 1991 after Freddie Mercury passed away, staying at number 1 for another 5 weeks. In the US, it wasn't as big initially, reaching number 9 in 1976. However, in 1992, after being used in the movie Wayne's World, it climbed to number 2. It went on to sell millions of copies and became one of the best-selling singles in UK history. Queen also changed the music video game. The video for Bohemian Rhapsody was filmed in just 4 hours and cost £4,500. Despite being simple, it was groundbreaking. The famous shot of the band's 4 faces in a prism shape was created using a trick called visual feedback. It became iconic and made music videos a key part of promoting songs. Later, Queen kept making memorable videos. In I Want to Break Free, the band dressed in women's clothes, inspired by the British soap opera Coronation Street. It was funny and bold, but MTV banned it in the US. Meanwhile, Radio Gaga was one of the most expensive videos of its time, costing $100,000. It featured scenes from the movie Metropolis, and Queen paid $100,000 just to use those clips. Queen's live shows were as impressive as their videos. In 1975, during their A Night at the Opera tour, they used a huge custom lighting setup with 168 lights and 12 aircraft landing lights. It was so massive it needed its own generator and took hours to set up. By 1986, at their famous Wembley concerts, their lighting rig had grown to over 1,000 lights, including a massive crown-shaped frame weighing 5 tons. Freddie Mercury's stage presence also evolved over time. When Queen started, Freddie was shy and often stayed behind his piano during performances. The iconic MIC stand he used without the bottom half actually came about by accident. One night, the MIC stand broke during a performance, but Freddie found he liked the freedom it gave him and stuck with it. Over time, his style became more flamboyant. In 1973, he began painting his nails black, inspired by Jimi Hendrix, and started wearing dramatic glam rock outfits designed by Zandra Rhodes. In 1976, he wore his famous Harlequin jumpsuit, a tight costume that had to be sewn onto him before each show. By the 1980s, Freddie transformed again. He grew a thick mustache and adopted a more macho look with leather pants and military-style jackets. This change was inspired by the gay club scene in New York. He still kept his playful energy. In the I Want to Break Free video, he appeared in drag but with his mustache intact, which confused some people and stirred up controversy. Freddie's stage antics became wilder as time went on. During the Hot Space Tour in 1982, he started riding on the shoulders of a crew member dressed as Darth Vader while singing We Will Rock You. In Japan, he once stripped down to just a pair of shorts during a concert, shedding his costume piece by piece as the show went on. His charisma and bold style made every performance unforgettable. Freddie Mercury and Queen went through a lot of changes in the 1980s. In 1981, the band tried a new sound with their album Hot Space. Freddie and John Deacon wanted to experiment with disco and funk music, but many fans didn't like it. The song Body Language came out in 1982 and caused even more controversy. Its lyrics and music video were too bold for the time, and MTV banned it. This upset fans, but Freddie kept exploring new ideas in music. In 1985, Freddie released his first solo album, Mr. Bad Guy. He worked on it for 2 years in Munich, paying attention to every little detail. The album was full of dance music and synthesizers, showing Freddie's creative side. He even dedicated it to his cats, writing, "This album is for my cat Jerry. Also Tom, Oscar, and Tiffany, and all the cat lovers in the universe. Screw everybody else." It reached the top 10 in the UK but didn't do well in the US. Still, it gave Freddie the confidence to do more. Later, in 1987, he worked with opera singer Montserrat Cabal on the album Barcelona. The title track mixed opera and rock, showing how powerful Freddie's voice was. The song became the anthem for the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona, but sadly, Freddie didn't live to see it performed. At the same time, Queen was struggling as a band. After Hot Space came out, they went on tour, but by the end of 1982, they decided to take a break. The band wasn't getting along. Brian May later admitted, "We hated each other for a while." Things got worse while recording their 1984 album The Works. Brian got so frustrated that he left the studio and spent hours in a park thinking about quitting. John Deacon suddenly left for Bali without telling anyone, which shocked everyone. When Freddie heard about Live Aid, he jokingly sang. Taking himself too seriously, his performances at the Sands Hotel drew big crowds, from celebrities to politicians, all eager to see the King of Cool in action. Dean Martin became a star on television with The Dean Martin Show, which aired from 1965 to 1974. Over 9 years, it became one of the most popular shows on NBC, running for 264 episodes. The show was a mix of comedy, music, and celebrity guests, and what made it so special was Martin himself. He had a laid-back style, always looking cool and relaxed, often holding a drink he joked was apple juice. People loved him because he seemed like someone who didn't take life too seriously. On the show, Martin didn't just sing hits like Everybody Loves Somebody and That's Amore, he also showed off his funny side. There were scripted jokes, but he loved to improvise, making each episode feel fresh and unpredictable. Big stars like Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and Orson Welles were regular guests, and their playful banter with Martin made viewers feel like they were part of a private Hollywood party. The show became so big that Martin won a Golden Globe in 1966-67 for his performance, proving just how much people loved his easygoing charm. But as time went on, the show's ratings started to slip. Instead of giving up, the producers came up with a brilliant idea, Dean Martin's Celebrity Roast. This new format featured Martin and a group of celebrities poking fun at one famous person in a friendly, light-hearted way. The first roast aired in 1974, honoring Bob Hope. It was such a hit that the roasts became a regular event, even after the main show ended. Martin was the perfect host for these roasts. He made everyone laugh with his sharp, witty jokes while keeping the mood fun and relaxed. The roasts featured actors, musicians, and even politicians, giving people a chance to see celebrities joking with and about each other in ways they couldn't anywhere else. The humor was edgy but never mean-spirited, and viewers loved seeing stars show their playful sides. Dean Martin's personal life was as interesting as his career. He was married 3 times and had 8 children. His first wife, Betty MacDonald, married him in 1941. They had 4 children, Craig, Claudia, Gail, and Deanna. Their marriage ended in 1949, just as Dean was becoming famous. Even after the divorce, Dean stayed close to his children, making time for them despite his busy life. Later, in 1949, Dean married Jean Bega. This marriage lasted 24 years and felt more stable than his first. They had 3 children together, Dean Paul, Ricky, and Gina. Even though Dean and Jean divorced in 1973, they stayed friends. They worked together to raise their kids and supported each other during tough times. Dean's third marriage, in 1973, was to Catherine Horn. Catherine was younger and worked as a receptionist when they met. Dean adopted her daughter, Sasha, and treated her like his own child. However, their marriage didn't last long, and they divorced in 1976. Despite the breakup, Dean remained a caring father to Sasha. Through all these changes, Dean's role as a father stayed constant. He had 8 children, and no matter how busy or famous he became, he always tried to be there for them. His daughter, Deanna, often talks about her father's love for family. She remembers having dinner together and seeing how much he cared. Growing up, she was surrounded by big Hollywood stars like Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe, but what stood out the most was Dean's warmth and humor as a dad. Dean made sure all his kids felt connected, even though they came from different marriages. His son Ricky once said that their father brought the family together and made them feel like one. Sasha, his adopted daughter, was treated the same as everyone else. This shows how much Dean valued family, no matter how complicated his life was. Dean also had a charm that attracted many women, leading to famous romances with stars like Angie Dickinson and Dinah Shore. These relationships often made headlines and added to his image as the king of cool. But behind the public persona, he was a man who cared deeply about his children. In 1987, his son Dean Paul Martin died in a plane crash. Dean Paul was flying a military jet during a training mission when it crashed into a mountain. He was only 35. The loss broke Martin's heart. Friends noticed he became quieter and more withdrawn. He also struggled with drinking after the tragedy. This event changed everything for him. After his son's death, Martin decided to stop performing. He turned down offers and even ended a reunion tour with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. He didn't want the pressure of public life anymore. Instead, he focused on simple things that made him happy. Golf became one of his favorite hobbies. He spent afternoons on the golf course, enjoying the peace and quiet. He also loved watching old Western movies, which reminded him of a simpler time. These quiet routines brought him some comfort in his later years. The engineer demanded changes to his bass levels even though he was clearly upset. When Deacon walked on stage, he gave one of the best performances of his life. Something tragic also happened that night. In the crowd, a 23-year-old fan named Michael Jennings collapsed during the song Who Wants to Live Forever. He was standing about 50 meters from the stage. Medics arrived quickly, but they couldn't save him. He was pronounced dead at 9:43 p.m. as Queen was playing Bohemian Rhapsody. The band didn't hear about it until after the show. Jennings had an undiagnosed heart condition, and the excitement of the concert, along with the huge crowd of 120,000 people, made it worse. Just 2 days earlier, Jennings had won his ticket in a radio contest. His friend Sarah, who was with him, said he was having the time of his life. He kept saying it was the best night ever. Then suddenly, he just fell. This heartbreaking moment led to stricter safety rules for big concerts in the future. After the show, Freddie Mercury left the stage quickly, which wasn't like him. Normally, Freddie loved the post-show celebrations and would stay to chat with the crew, but this time he rushed off just seconds after the final song ended. His assistant, Peter Freestone, later explained that Freddie had gotten a call from his doctor before the show. It was about his health, and it must have been worrying. That, along with the physical effort of the performance, seemed to weigh on him. Freddie even left behind his silver bracelet, a piece of jewelry he had worn for every show since 1977. A cleaner found it later, and it was returned to him. On the ride back to London, Freddie sat silently, staring out the window and dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. It was clear he was deep in thought. Backstage, Freddie had a brief moment of weakness. He turned to his longtime friend and personal assistant, Peter Freestone, and whispered, "I don't know if I can do this." Roger Taylor also remembered a haunting moment after the show. He found Freddie sitting alone in the dressing room. Freddie looked up at him and said, "Darling, I think I've given it my all." At the time, Roger thought Freddie was just tired. But now, he realizes Freddie was saying goodbye. Roger keeps a drumstick from that night in his studio as a reminder of their last show. John Deacon, who left the public years ago, called it the hardest performance of his life. he admitted that he cried during These Are the Days of Our Lives because he felt it might be the last time they would play together. For everyone in the band, that night felt like the end of an era. Freddie Mercury's life was full of deep relationships, struggles, and surprises. One of the most important people in his life was Mary Austin. Freddie met Mary in 1969 when he was 24 and she was 19. They quickly fell in love, moved in together, and even got engaged. But in 1976, Freddie told Mary he was bisexual. In her calm and honest way, she said, "No, Freddie, I think you gay." This moment changed their romantic relationship, but they stayed close friends for life. Freddie always said Mary was his one true friend and that no one could replace her. He cared for her even after they stopped being a couple. He bought her a flat in Kensington in 1980, close to his own house. When he wrote his will, he left her half of his fortune, including his mansion. Mary stayed by his side when his health got worse. After he passed away, she kept the secret of where his ashes were spread, just as Freddie wanted. Freddie also had other relationships. He met Jim Hutton, a hairdresser, in 1985, and they stayed together until Freddie's death in 1991. But Freddie's life wasn't simple. He was also close to an Austrian actress named Barbara Valentin, and the three of them sometimes spent time together. Freddie's relationships often overlapped, showing how complicated his personal life was. Freddie's struggles with his sexuality and public image lasted his entire life. Born in 1946, he grew up in a time when being gay was illegal in many places. He knew he liked men from a young age but had to hide it. When people asked about his sexuality, Freddie would joke or say something vague, like calling himself as gay as a daffodil. It was his way of avoiding the truth while still being playful. Freddie wasn't just a musician, he was an artist. He studied art and design in college and loved painting. Over the years, he collected rare and beautiful things, like paintings by Picasso and Japanese woodblock prints. He also loved collecting antique glass and even commissioned portraits of his cats. His collections filled his mansion and showed how much he appreciated beauty. Freddie Mercury kept his battle with AIDS a secret for many years. He didn't tell the public or even most of his close friends. In April 1987, he learned he had HIV, but some symptoms had shown as early as 1982. On a trip to New York that year, he went to a doctor about a spot on his. It might have been an early sign of the disease. Even with this, Mercury denied all the rumors about his health. The press didn't let him rest. British tabloids, especially The Sun, started writing stories about Mercury's health in 1986. These articles, mixed with the fear and stigma around AIDS at the time, likely made him stay silent. Even in Queen, the band rarely talked about it. Guitarist Brian May said they didn't ask questions because Mercury didn't want them to. Only a few people close to him knew the truth. His assistant, Peter Freestone, later said Mercury had seen many friends die from AIDS, and it was always on his mind. He took to his cats more than he would friends. He really would, he would call them up. Mercury wanted to protect himself and those close to him. Just one day before he died, he released a public statement. He explained why he had kept it private all those years. People kept guessing because Mercury looked thinner and weaker over time. On November 23, 1991, he finally told the world he had AIDS. The next day, he passed away. This ended years of silence and speculation. Even when he was very sick, Mercury never gave up on music. In 1990, Queen recorded the album Innuendo. The band made changes to their schedule to help him. They worked for 3 weeks and then took 2 weeks off so Mercury could rest. The band knew how serious his condition was by then. Brian May said doctors told them Mercury didn't have much time, but Mercury pushed himself to keep working. One of the songs, "The Show Must Go On," became a symbol of his determination. May doubted if Mercury could handle the challenging vocals. Mercury drank a shot of vodka and said, "I'll do it, darling." He then delivered a perfect performance in one take. After finishing Innuendo, Mercury kept recording. In May 1991, he worked on songs like Mother Love, but he couldn't finish it. His last recording session was on May 22, 1991. He recorded A Winter's Tale, which appeared on the posthumous album Made in Heaven. Even while battling a terminal illness, Mercury worked tirelessly to leave behind music that would last forever. Freddie Mercury's last public appearance was on February 18, 1990, at the Brit Awards. Queen received an award for outstanding contribution to British music. Mercury looked very thin and tired, which shocked fans. Still, he showed up to honor his band and fans. On stage, Brian May gave most of the speech. "Yeah, he came to see us play. We had a little group called Smile, and Freddie came along to watch. He was really, really enthusiastic and full of energy." Mercury only said, "Thank you, good night." These were his final public words, a simple yet emotional farewell. In the last months of his life, Mercury's health declined quickly. By June 1991, he stayed mostly at home in Kensington, West London. Close friends and his ex-partner Mary Austin visited him often to offer support. "It took a long while for me to really fall in love with this man," she said. But his condition became worse. He lost his sight, couldn't move much, and was often in bed. On November 22, 1991, he stopped taking his medication except for pain relief. That same day, he prepared a public statement with Queen's manager, Jim Beach. The statement was released on November 23, confirming his AIDS diagnosis. Freddie Mercury passed away on November 24, 1991, at the age of 45. The cause of death was pneumonia brought on by AIDS. His partner, Jim Hutton, described his final moments as peaceful, saying Mercury looked calm and radiant before passing. After his death, Mercury's music only grew more popular. In 1995, Queen released Made in Heaven, an album featuring his last recordings. It became a global hit, selling over 20 million copies.